It was a quiet, chilly evening when the CEO of one of the largest cleaning service companies in the country, Mason Reed, decided to step into the shoes of his own employees. Mason had built his company, Sparkle Clean Company, from the ground up. It started as a small business with just a handful of workers, and now it was a nationwide name. But lately, something had been bothering him. Reports of low employee morale, high turnover rates, and whispers of unfair treatment had reached his ears. Mason wasn't the kind of man to ignore problems. He believed in facing them head-on. So, he made a decision, one that would change everything. He would go undercover as a janitor in one of his own facilities. No one would know who he was. No special treatment. No privileges. Just him a mop and a bucket. He wanted to see for himself what life was really like for the people who kept his company running. What he discovered would shake him to his core. The night shift at the Westfield office complex was about to begin. Mason stood in the dimly lit employee break room, wearing a plain gray uniform with the company logo stitched on the chest. His name tag read Mike. He had chosen the name randomly, wanting to blend in completely. Around him were a handful of other janitors, all looking tired but ready to start their shift. Mason noticed how quiet the room was. No laughter, no chatter, just the sound of boots scuffing against the floor and the occasional sigh. One of the janitors, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and a kind face, approached him. His name tag read Hank. Hank extended a hand and gave Mason a small, weary smile. "First night, huh? Don't worry, kid. It's not as bad as it looks. Just keep your head down and do your job. You'll be fine." Mason shook Hank's hand, feeling a pang of guilt. Here was a man who had probably been working for his company for years, and he had no idea who Mason really was. "Thanks, Hank. I'll do my best." The supervisor, a stern-looking man named Greg, walked in and clapped his hands. "All right, listen up. We've got a lot of work to do tonight, and I don't want any slacking. If I catch anyone sitting around, there'll be consequences. Let's move." Mason followed the group as they grabbed their cleaning supplies and headed to their assigned areas. He was paired with Hank, who seemed to be the veteran of the group. As they walked, Hank gave him a quick rundown of what to expect. "We've got 3 floors to clean tonight. Offices, restrooms, break rooms, the works. It's a lot, but we'll get through it. Just stick with me." The first few hours were grueling. Mason quickly realized how physically demanding the job was. His back ached from bending over to clean floors, and his hands were raw from scrubbing. But what bothered him more was the way Greg treated the workers. The supervisor constantly barked orders, belittling anyone who didn't move fast enough. At one point, Greg snapped at Hank for taking a 30-second break to catch his breath. "You think we're paying you to sit around, old man? Get back to work." Mason's blood boiled, but he stayed quiet. He wanted to see how far this would go. Around midnight, the team took their only break of the night. Mason sat next to Hank in the break room, both men sipping coffee from paper cups. Hank looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped and his eyes heavy. "You hanging in there, Mike?" he asked. Mason nodded. "Yeah, but it's tough. How do you do this every night?" Hank chuckled softly. "You get used to it, but it's not easy. The pay's not great, and the hours are long. But it's a job, you know. Gotta put food on the table." Mason hesitated, then asked, "What about Greg? Is he always like that?" Hank's expression darkened. "Yeah, he's a real piece of work. Thinks he's better than the rest of us just because he's the boss. But you know what? We're the ones keeping this place running. Without us, this whole building would fall apart." Mason felt a lump in his throat. Hank's words hit him hard. These men were the backbone of his company, and they were being treated like they didn't matter. As the night wore on, Mason noticed something else, something that made his heart sink. One of the younger janitors, a guy named Derek, was limping slightly. When Mason asked if he was okay, Derek shrugged it off. "It's nothing. Just twisted my ankle last week. But I can't afford to take time off. If I miss a shift, I'll get fired." Mason couldn't believe what he was hearing. Here was a young man, barely in his 20s, working through an injury because he was afraid of losing his job. It was a stark reminder of how little power these workers had. By the time the shift ended at 6 a.m., Mason was physically and emotionally drained. But he wasn't ready to leave just yet. He waited until the others had gone, then approached Greg. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Greg frowned. "What is it?" "Make it quick. I've got things to do." Mason took a deep breath. "I just wanted to ask, why do you treat the workers like that? They're doing their best. Don't they deserve a little respect? Greg laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Respect? These guys are replaceable. If they don't like it, they can quit. There are plenty of others who'd kill for this job. Mason's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice calm. You really think that? That they're just replaceable? Greg sneered. Yeah, I do. Now, if you've got a problem with that, maybe this job isn't for you. Mason nodded slowly. You're right. Maybe it's not. The next morning, Mason called an emergency meeting with his executive team. He walked into the boardroom, still wearing his janitor's uniform. The room fell silent as everyone stared at him in shock. Good morning, Mason began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Last night, I worked as a janitor in one of our facilities, and what I saw, it broke my heart. Our employees, the people who keep this company running, are being treated like they don't matter. They're overworked, underpaid, and disrespected. And that ends today. He went on to outline a series of changes he wanted to implement immediately: higher wages, better benefits, and a zero-tolerance policy for workplace abuse. He also announced that Greg would be fired and replaced with someone who understood the value of treating employees with dignity. A week later, Mason returned to the Westfield office complex, this time as himself. He gathered the janitorial staff in the break room and addressed them directly. I want to apologize to each and every one of you. What you've been through is unacceptable, and I take full responsibility. But I want you to know that things are going to change. Starting today, you'll be paid a fair wage, and you'll have access to benefits you deserve. And if anyone ever treats you with disrespect, I want you to come to me directly. The room was silent for a moment, then Hank stepped forward, tears in his eyes. Thank you, Mr. Reed. This means a lot. Mason shook his hand, his own eyes glistening. No, Hank. Thank you. You've shown me what it really means to work hard and stay strong. You're the heart of this company, and I won't forget that. As Mason left the building that day, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had started his company with a dream, to create a place where people could work with pride and dignity. And now, he was going to make sure that dream became a reality. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about profits or growth. It was about people, and Mason Reed was determined to do right by them. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.